the small town of Willow Creek, everyone knew Tom. He was the friendly delivery boy who always smiled, and it seemed like no one could ever say anything bad about him. Every morning, he would hop on his old bike with a basket full of groceries for people in town. He had a reputation for being cheerful and always having something funny to say. Tom liked people to think he worked hard. In fact, he loved telling everyone how much he worked. He'd laugh and say, "No one works harder than me. I'm the hardest worker in this town." But the truth was, Tom didn't like to work much at all. He had found ways to make his job easier. Sometimes he would take long breaks in the park, sitting on a bench with his phone, pretending to be busy. He would smile and wave to people as they passed by, and they would always say, "There goes Tom, working hard as usual." One sunny afternoon, Tom was riding his bike to deliver groceries to Mrs. Johnson, a sweet old lady who lived on the other side of town. As he stopped to rest under a big oak tree, he noticed something new. A woman and her young daughter were walking by. The woman had long brown hair that fell gently over her shoulders, and her daughter was laughing and skipping beside her. Tom's heart skipped a beat. "Wow, she's beautiful," he thought to himself, "and so kind, too." The woman's name was Susan, and she had recently moved to Willow Creek with her daughter Ellie. Susan was trying to make a fresh start after a difficult year. She worked long hours at the local diner to take care of Ellie, who was only 5 years old. They didn't have much, but they were happy. As Tom watched Susan and Ellie walk down the street, he smiled to himself. "I have to meet her," he thought. Tom didn't usually notice women, but something about Susan caught his attention. He rode his bike faster to finish his delivery, already thinking of a way to talk to her. The next day, Tom found himself delivering groceries to Susan's house. When he knocked on the door, Susan answered with a smile, and Tom couldn't help but stare for a moment. She was even more beautiful up close. Her smile made him feel nervous, but he quickly pushed that feeling aside. "Hello, Tom," Susan greeted him kindly. "Thanks for the groceries." "Hi, Susan," Tom said, trying to sound confident, though his voice came out a little shaky. "I hope everything is okay. If you need any help with anything, just let me know." Susan looked at him, puzzled but polite. "That's sweet of you, Tom, but I think we're all good for now. Just trying to get through the day, you know?" Tom nodded, trying not to seem too eager. I know. It can be a lot of work with a little one. I totally get it." Ellie, who was playing with her toys on the floor, looked up and waved. "Hi, Tom," she said in her sweet, high-pitched voice. Tom smiled. "Hey, Ellie, you're looking like a star today." Susan smiled at the compliment, but didn't say much more. Tom stayed for a few minutes, making small talk, but he didn't want to overstay his welcome. As he left, he noticed Susan watching him through the window, her thoughtful gaze lingering a little longer than usual. Over the next few weeks, Tom couldn't stop thinking about Susan. He would make extra deliveries to her house, hoping to see her again. Sometimes he would linger just a little longer, making sure to smile extra wide so she'd notice him. He was trying to find a way to talk to her more, but she was always so busy. Then, one evening, as Tom was dropping off a bag of groceries, he overheard Susan talking to her neighbor Karen. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the conversation caught his attention. "I need someone to watch Ellie tonight," Susan said, sounding worried. "I've got to work late at the diner, and I don't want to leave her alone." Tom's ears perked up. This was his chance. He didn't have any other plans, and helping Susan seemed like the perfect way to show her that he was responsible. He stepped forward and smiled. "I can help," he said quickly, almost too quickly. "I love kids, and I have plenty of time tonight. I can look after Ellie while you work." Susan looked at him, clearly surprised by the offer. "Oh, that's very kind of you, Tom," she said, a little uncertain. "Are you sure you'll be okay with it? It's a lot of responsibility." Tom puffed out his chest, trying to sound confident. "Absolutely. I'm really good with kids. You don't have to worry." Susan hesitated for a moment. She didn't know Tom that well, and leaving her daughter with someone she didn't trust was a big decision. Still, she smiled, relieved that she had someone who seemed willing to help. "Well, okay, Tom," she said. "That's very generous of you. I'll just make sure Ellie is ready, and then I'll go. Thank you." Tom grinned, feeling proud of himself. He was certain this was the start of something great. Little did he know, Susan had a plan of her own to test his true character. Later that evening, Susan sat down with her best friend Karen over a cup of tea. "I don't know about Tom," Susan admitted. "He's nice, but I don't know if he's really as responsible as he says." Karen raised an eyebrow. "Well, why don't we test him? Let's see if he can actually handle the responsibility of watching Ellie for a bit." Susan thought about it for a moment. "That sounds like a good idea. I don't want to take any chances with Ellie." So, they came up with a plan. The next day, Susan called Tom. "Tom," she said, "I need to go to a quick meeting tonight. Could you come over and keep Ellie company for a bit? It'll just be for an hour or so." Tom was excited. This was his chance to show Susan that he could be trusted. "I'll be there, don't worry," he said confidently. Tom arrived at Susan's house that evening, excited to show off his skills as a babysitter. Susan handed him a list of things to do. "Here's what Ellie needs," she said. "Please clean up the living room, prepare her snack, and read her a bedtime story." Tom looked at the list, then looked at Ellie, who was playing on the floor. "No problem," he said, trying to sound confident. But inside, he felt a little nervous. This was more work than he had expected. As soon as Susan left, Tom sank into the couch, hoping Ellie would just play quietly. But she didn't. She came over to him, holding a book, looking up at him with big, hopeful eyes. "Can you read this to me, Tom?" she asked. Tom froze. He wasn't prepared for this. He didn't know how to handle kids like this. But he couldn't let Susan know he wasn't prepared. "Maybe later," he said, waving her off. "How about you play for a while, and I'll read it to you later." Ellie pouted, but wandered off to play with her toys. Tom sat back on the couch, pulling out his phone. He began scrolling through social media, hoping the time would pass quickly. But what he didn't know was that Karen was outside, watching through the window, taking pictures of Tom's lack of effort. Inside the house, Tom's plan wasn't going as expected. As the minutes ticked by, Ellie continued playing with her toys. She seemed content enough, but Tom wasn't doing the work that Susan had asked him to. He glanced at the list on the counter and sighed. "I'll get to it later," he muttered under his breath. His phone buzzed, and he quickly distracted himself by checking his messages. He couldn't help but laugh at a funny meme. Time was moving slowly, but instead of focusing on Ellie and the tasks, Tom allowed himself to get lost in his screen. Outside, Karen was still watching. She snapped a few photos of Tom lounging on the couch, phone in hand, while Ellie quietly played in the corner. Karen wasn't the type to let things go, so she made sure to capture everything. She knew that Susan would want to see how Tom was really behaving. Inside the house, Ellie wandered back over to Tom, holding up a colorful picture book. "Tom, can we read the story now?" she asked again. Tom looked up from his phone. The guilt hit him, but he didn't want to get up and do the work. "In a minute," he said. "I just need to finish something on my phone." Ellie stared at him for a moment, then reluctantly walked back to her toys, her small face dropping in disappointment. Tom didn't notice, too busy scrolling through social media. Minutes turned into an hour. Tom hadn't done anything from the list yet, and Ellie's snack was still untouched on the kitchen counter. Tom had promised to be helpful, but he hadn't followed through. Still, he tried to convince himself that everything was fine. Susan would be back soon, and he'd just pretend everything had gone smoothly. But little did he know, Susan's best friend, Karen, was not going to let him off the hook so easily. When Susan returned, she was hopeful, but but also a bit anxious. She wanted to know if Tom could handle the responsibility of taking care of Ellie. She was tired from her meeting and just wanted to relax, but she needed to check in with Tom first. As she opened the door, Karen was already waiting in the hallway, holding her phone. "Susan," she said, with a serious expression, "I think you need to see this." Karen handed Susan the phone, and as Susan watched the video, her face fell. There was Tom, sitting on the couch, his attention fully absorbed in his phone. Ellie was playing alone in the corner, trying her best to entertain herself. Tom hadn't read her the story. He hadn't made her snack. He hadn't done anything from the list Susan had left. Susan watched with disappointment. "I can't believe this," she whispered. She had hoped Tom would rise to the occasion, but instead, he had failed to take responsibility. When Tom saw Susan come in, his heart sank. He had expected everything to be fine, but the look on Susan's face told him otherwise. He quickly put down his phone and stood up from the couch, trying to hide his nervousness. "Hey, Susan," he said, forcing a smile. "Everything went great. Ellie was so good, and we had lots of fun." Susan raised an eyebrow. "Really?" she asked, her tone calm but firm. "Because I just watched a video of you ignoring Ellie and sitting on your phone the whole time. You didn't do anything you said you would." Tom's stomach turned. He had hoped Susan wouldn't find out. He opened his mouth to speak, but didn't know what to say. How could he explain himself? I just didn't realize how much work it would be," Tom stammered. "I thought I could just hang out and let Ellie play. I didn't mean to disappoint you." Susan crossed her arms and looked at him carefully. "Tom, taking care of a child is a big responsibility. It's not just about sitting around. Ellie needed you, and you weren't there for her." Tom's face turned red with embarrassment. He had tried to impress Susan, but now it was clear that he had failed. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I just wanted to show you that I could help." Karen stepped forward, looking at Tom with a disapproving expression. "I think it's time for you to be honest with yourself, Tom," she said. "You can't keep pretending to be someone you're not." Tom hung his head. He had been caught, and there was no way to hide from the truth. He felt like he had let Susan down. "I'm really sorry," he said again, looking at Susan with sincere regret. Susan's expression softened. She could see that Tom was genuinely sorry, but she also knew that he needed to learn a lesson. "Tom, I'm not angry with you, but you need to understand something," she said gently. "Helping others isn't about looking good. It's about showing up and doing the work, even when it's hard." Tom nodded. He felt awful for letting Susan down, but he also knew that this was an important lesson. He had always tried to take the easy way out, But now he saw that being responsible wasn't always easy, but it was important. "I'll do better," Tom promised. "I'll prove to you that I can handle responsibility. I'll find a way to show you that I can be trusted." Susan smiled. "That's the first step, Tom. Just remember, actions speak louder than words." The next day, Tom woke up early, determined to make a change. He didn't want to be known as the lazy delivery boy anymore. He wanted to prove that he could be someone who was dependable and hardworking. Tom decided to start by volunteering at the local community center, helping out with the kids after school. At first, Tom felt overwhelmed. The kids were energetic, and there was a lot to do. But he remembered what Susan had said. It wasn't about looking good. It was about doing the work. Slowly, he began to enjoy the feeling of helping others, and the children started to look up to him. Weeks passed, and Tom's reputation began to change. He no longer just delivered groceries with a smile. He became a part of the community, someone people could rely on. Susan noticed the change in him, and she was proud of him. He had proven that he could be responsible, and she began to trust him more. Though Tom didn't win her heart the way he had hoped, he gained something even more important: the respect of his community. He had learned that true strength came from working hard, even when it wasn't easy. As time went on, Tom and Susan's relationship grew into a strong friendship. They would talk often, sharing stories and helping each other out. Susan would occasionally ask Tom to help with small things, and he was always there, showing up when it mattered. Tom had come a long way from the lazy delivery boy he used to be. Now, he was someone others could depend on, and he had earned the trust and admiration of the people around him. He had become a role model for the kids in town, especially Ellie, who looked up to him like an older brother. One afternoon, as Tom was playing with the children at the community center, he saw Susan walking by with Ellie. He waved, and Ellie ran over to him with a big smile. "Hi, Tom," she said. "You're my hero." Tom smiled and ruffled her hair. "Thanks, Ellie. You're pretty awesome, too." As Susan watched from a distance, she smiled to herself. Tom had come a long way, and she was proud of the person he had become. They may not have ended up together in the way Tom had hoped, but they had found something even more valuable: a true friendship built on trust and respect.